Hello everyone, welcome to my talk on the power of Playwright, supercharge your test automation. Before we go ahead, a short introduction about myself. I am Shoaib Ahmed Sheikh. I am a lead tech at TSS Consultancy Private Limited. I am having 8 plus years of experience. I am working in BFSI domain. I majorly work into testing, automation in testing, automation checking with technologies like Selenium, Playwright.net. I also have some exposure in performance testing using the tool JMeter. You can reach out to me on the social media. These are my Twitter and LinkedIn IDs. So, coming to the agenda for today, we'll talk about how Playwright was born. Then, we'll see some of the differences about Playwright, Cypress, and Selenium. Then, we'll see about Playwright architecture, Playwright introduction. We'll see some of the features of Playwright, starting with the browser context, how you can run test in full isolation mode, and how it is faster, how the execution of the test can be faster using the browser context approach. We'll talk about Playwright emulations, which has test mobile web, locally, time zone, and also viewports. Then we'll talk about Playwright resilient, how the test is not flaky as compared to the other browser automation tool. Then we'll see a very powerful tooling for trace viewer. Then we'll talk about how you can bypass the authentication state by saving the credentials. Then we'll see how we can do a file upload and download using Playwright. And last, we'll talk about code generation where you can just record and generate code and just export and use it. So let's begin. How Playwright was born. So there was a Puppeteer tool which was built on Node.js library, and it was basically a Chromium based browser tool. It was developed by Google. So what Microsoft did, Microsoft hired the Puppeteer team from Google, and he built uh, a tool called Playwright. It is like an advanced and enhanced version of Puppeteer. So let's see about the difference about Playwright, Cypress, and Selenium. So Playwright basically supports languages like JavaScript, TypeScript, Python, Java, C Sharp, whereas Selenium is more ahead, also supporting Ruby and Kotlin. Cypress is majorly into JavaScript and TypeScript only. Automating mechanism. Playwright claims that you can have no flaky test while using Playwright, but it does a much better job than Selenium and Cypress. It strongly supports it. Whereas Selenium is a library, whereas Playwright and Cypress are the frameworks. Browser supports. Playwright support Chromium, Chrome, MSH, WebKit, Firefox. Selenium actually supports the browsers like Chrome, MSH, Safari, Firefox, IE, and Opera. And Cypress also support Chrome, MSH, Firefox, and Electron browser with a WebKit, which is an experimental version. Test flakiness. As compared to the other tools, Playwright tests are much more stable. With Selenium, since it is a library, if you don't handle things properly, you can get much more flaky tests. And with Cypress also, it supports auto waiting mechanism, so the flaky test is a bit low. Trace viewer, it's like one of the best feature that I came across is trace viewer. Like you can see network calls and everything. It is amazing. With Selenium, you can use trace with configuration in Selenium Grid, but not as excellent as Playwright. With Cypress, it's like inside the browser. For me, it's like the Playwright Trace Viewer is something the best one. Playwright is open source, Selenium is open source, Cypress, you have the cloud dashboard, which is a paid version. The speed of execution, Playwright is much more faster than Selenium and Cypress. Whereas Selenium is but bit slower due to the driver initialization part, whereas the Selenium is moving towards the BiDi, WebDriver BiDi. Maybe in future we can have Selenium test also running a bit faster, but let's see. And Cypress is faster than Selenium, but a bit slower than Playwright. Iframes, yes, Playwright supports iframe. Selenium also supports iframe, but in Cypress, unfortunately, you need to add some plugins to it. Community support, since Playwright is new, the community is growing. Selenium is having a very huge community supports, and Cypress, it has an active community support. API testing, Playwright has its inbuilt thing where you can also test your APIs. Selenium does not have any concept of API testing. Cypress also has an API testing thing. So let's talk about the architecture. Uh, Architecture plays a very crucial role. Architecture that actually drives what your web automation driver can or cannot do. The way you have designed your architecture, the test and the controlling of the drivers and everything happens that way. So let's talk about the Chromium app. These are basically the high level processes that that live inside the Chromium app. Not all, but subsystems that live inside the browser. So inside the browser, we have Chromium engine, and inside the Chromium, I'm talking about the Chrome and MSH or any browser that uses Chromium as the engine. It has something called browser process, which has security location and input. It has rendering processes like JavaScript and workers. It also has some service workers process. We have network process. Okay. So some web automation automates in process automation, which lives inside it. For in this example, we can see you can automate the JavaScript automation. Then using the WebDriver protocols, okay, there are something called out process web automations where it use Chrome DevTool protocols, okay, and then you can automate the input fill and also the JavaScript render processes. But you can't touch all the processes together, if you can see. With the existing frameworks and tools and libraries that are there. Okay, so you have in process automation, you have out process web automation. So what Playwright does? Playwright also use the CDP protocols, but it can handle all the processes together. Like it has control over different processes which are present inside the Chromium app. Whereas with in-process automation and out-process automation, you can just touch few and check check it together, but not all the processes which are present. So why Playwright has built such kind of processes? There is something called Chrome Developer Tools. So Chrome Dev Tool is auto scalable and it is battle tested for 10 plus years. So Playwright is using a concept of same structure of architecture of how Chrome Dev Tool does, and they have built it that way. So, so that was about Chromium. Like it did it for Chrome browser or MS Edge browser which use Chromium engine. What about the other browsers like Firefox or WebKit? So Playwright does the same thing for all the other browsers as well. Isn't that interesting? So the Playwright architecture is the foundation of all the Playwright capabilities. It is battle tested for 10 years since it is developed like the Chrome developer tools, and it is future proof because in whichever direction the web swings, the Playwright team will follow it. Now, let's talk about Playwright. Playwright enables reliable end-to-end testing for modern web applications. Anything which run in the browser, you can test using Playwright. Cross-browser testing, Playwright supports all modern rendering engines like Chromium, WebKit, and Firefox. The Electron is still in the experimental thing. What about the cross-platform thing? Playwright support Windows, Linux, Mac OS locally or on CLI. You can run it in headless or headed mode. It is like you write the code once and it works across any of the platforms. No need to change your code if you are running on Linux or Mac OS. That is great. What about the programming language that it supports? Playwright API supports TypeScript, JavaScript, Python, .NET, Java. So majorly it supports all which are used. What are the prerequisite and the system requirements? Playwright is a distributed .NET standard library. We recommend .NET for C Sharp. I'm talking about the C Sharp thing. You need a PowerShell to install. You need Windows 10 plus Windows servers for Mac OS. For so these are basically the prerequisite for C Sharp for Java. If you are using a Java, you need Java 8 or higher. You need Windows 10 plus, Mac OS 12. Then Debian, it's like for Linux thing for people. You should have Apache Maven and an IDE. Java IDE can be IntelliJ or Eclipse. These two are like a famous one. For C Sharp, people usually use Visual Studio. For Python, uh, Python 3.8 or higher, Windows 10 plus, Mac OS, Debian, IDE, Visual Studio Code is enough. For JS, same Visual Studio Code is enough as an IDE, and you need Node.js 16 plus for this. So these are basically the prerequisite and the system requirement before you start writing. Now let's talk about full isolation, fast execution. Nothing but the browser context thing. What is a browser context? Playwright creates browser context for each test. We'll dive deep and we'll understand what exactly browser context is. Browser context is equivalent to a brand new browser profile. This delivers full test isolation with zero overhead. Creating a new browser context only takes a handful of milliseconds. Okay, so imagine like if you are running a Selenium test with a driver, and every time you need to open a Chrome driver or any browser, you imagine we are opening Chrome using Chrome driver. So the time taken to start the browser can be in seconds, but if you create a browser context, it only take handfuls of milliseconds. And each test is running in isolation mode, so there won't be any sharing between any browser context. So let's understand how it works. A browser, we have a browser with a single browser instance. We can have a browser context, and inside the browser context, we have page. So there is a page 1 and a page 2. So we have page 1 and page 2. Page 1 and page 2 is nothing but the tabs in the browser. A browser context is nothing but it opens like a new browser profile. If you see, it will be a new browser if you see it like. Now, we can have multiple browser context and each browser context has different pages. So imagine you can do multiple things simultaneously. Playwright works in an asynchronous way. So let's see an example about browser context. Okay. So I will be using C Sharp and Visual Studio to demonstrate this example in this presentation. So we will be creating a class library for .NET. We'll name the project as Playwright Demo 01 and we'll create a .NET 6.0 project. Okay. So the first thing is you need to go to manage NuGet and download the dependencies. I'll download the Playwright dependency. It is similar to the Maven. In pom.xml you add the MVN from the MVN repository you add it. In same way in C Sharp we go to NuGet package manager and we download those stuffs. So I'll download the Playwright extension, the package, the library. Then we will be using unit testing framework. Okay, this is similar to the test and the JUnit for people who use Java, and the test SDK is used to run the test. Okay, now we'll delete the class file and we'll create a class file. So we'll create a test folder and we'll create a class file inside it. So we are talking about browser context, so we'll use browser context. We'll make the class as public. Test fixture, it is nothing but an annotation or an attribute as you call. Test fixture means this class contains test cases, and which method is a test case, that is defined by the test attribute that you write about the test method. Above any method, if you write test attribute, only that method is considered as a test. Since Playwright is an asynchronous, we make the method as asynchronous task. The first thing that you need to do is you need to initialize the Playwright. So we write await Playwright dot and we'll do a create async. This creates a Playwright object. From the Playwright object, okay, we create a browser. So we write await Playwright dot chromium. We write chromium, so a chromium browser will get open. From the browser, we create a browser context. So it goes like Playwright. From Playwright object, we create a browser. From browser object, we create a context. Now, from the context, we create a page. We write await context dot new page. Okay. And now using the page, we can navigate to different URLs and we do all kind of the action operations. Okay, that you usually do it. So I'll be going to a website called qualitytestinghub.com. I'll run this test and see, boom, the test ran and we didn't saw anything. Okay, why? Because by default Playwright runs everything in headless mode. To view the Chromium browser for now, we need to run the test in headed mode. So we need to pass option, which is nothing but new browser type launch option, and we make it headless as false. Now, if we run the test, we will see a Chromium browser getting open and the test ran. The test has run on a Chromium browser. See, it is not Chrome, it is Chromium. Perfect. Now, since this is done, we'll see how we can run the test in Chrome browser. So we'll use a channel option and we'll set it to Chrome. And if I run the test once again, the test has opened a Chrome browser. If I go to Chrome, the test is ran on a Google Chrome browser. Now, since Edge is also built on Chromium engine, if I write MSH as the channel and if I run the test, a MSH browser is open. I go to the settings and see it is Microsoft Edge here. So if I just debug it once again, you can see the website gets slow. A bit of internet fluctuation. That's why. That's it. Cool. Perfect. So now let's see about uh, the other browser types. Okay. Like to launch a Firefox browser, you can have the command as await playwright.firefox.launch async. And same way for WebKit, we write playwright.webkit.launch async. And if you need to run it in headless mode, you can make it as true. By default, Playwright run the test in headless mode. If you want to see any browser, you make it headless equal to false. Perfect. So let's go ahead. Now we saw with a single browser. Let's see how we can use two browser contexts and two different pages. Okay. So one page is nothing but one tab. We'll open one tab in one browser context and another tab in other browser context. In one, we'll open Quality Testing Hub. In other, we'll open a google.com. So see, when I run the test, there are two browsers that got open, one with google.com and one with Quality Testing Hub. Okay, now let's move ahead. Like we saw one browser context, another browser context. Now let's make it two pages, like two tabs in one browser and two tabs in another browser. We'll follow the same process by how we create a page, await.context.new page, but we'll use the second page object to go to a different URL. You can do any kind of operation with it, okay? Any actions. By operation, I mean any actions, any website you can automate. So in first browser context, in first browser, we'll have two tabs. One should open Quality Testing Hub, another one should open open source demo dot orangehmlive.com. The second browser should open a google.com and it should go to a website Playwright. Okay, so now we'll see two browser context, two pages like we saw in the diagram. Same way, we'll go ahead. We'll just add the commenting part. This is the first page, this is the second page, and below as well, this is the first page for the second browser, and this is the second page for the second browser. Now let's see. Once we run it, what happens? Mm, I'll just debug the code. Perfect. The test ran so smoothly, so fast. See, isn't the execution speed is very fast. See, there are two website.co got open within a second. Like boom, we ran the test and everything happened. Okay, so let's move ahead. Let's talk about test mobile web. How can you emulate the Chrome browser like it is running on your phone? So we can stimulate the browser behavior of a specific device. Device is nothing but your Android device. If you want to launch a Chrome browser in a specific device, like it can be an iPhone, how the website can look in the Android phone on a Chrome browser or a Safari browser, you can do it using Playwright. Okay, you can adjust the screen size, you can adjust the viewport as well. So let's see a demo how it happens. So this is the website where you get all the details of all the devices that Playwright support. Okay, it will, you just need to add the name. They have adjusted the viewports by default, so you don't need to worry about setting the viewport for each device again and again. You just need to add the phone name, the mobile name, and boom, the test will run. So this is a similar test like what we saw in the previous video or the previous example. Okay, you just need to initialize a variable with the playwright object dot devices, and you need to mention the device name, and you need to pass it inside the browser context. Okay, so see, when I ran the test, it opened iPhone 11 Pro Max in a landscape mode. What if I write iPhone 13? Okay, this is not in the landscape mode right now. So once I run the test, see, the website got open on a Chrome browser in, and this is how it will look in iPhone 13. So this is exactly how the browser emulates. Okay, now let's see about WebKit. We saw about Chrome. Now let's see about WebKit. All right. Now if I run the test, okay, what will happen? It will open iPhone 13 on a WebKit. I'm using a Windows system and I don't have a WebKit installed in my system, a Safari browser. So by default, the Playwright has its own WebKit thing and it opens and it looks that way. Now let's talk about the viewports. What are viewports? Viewports are nothing but handling the screen size. Okay, how you do it? You simply need to add the viewports inside the browser context. So inside the browser context, you need to part a new, you write viewport size, and you just give the width and the height of the viewport size that you want. So for now, I'll write the width as 1280 by height, and we can set it anything, okay, depending upon the size and width you want to test and see how your website looks or performs in a specific port size. Okay, it is very simple, just add it in the browser context and that is done. So I'll debug this test and let's see how the screen size is looks. And this is how your website will look with 1280 8021 024. Okay. Now I'll s- I'll set the view size to a different screen size. Like either you add it inside the browser context, or you are running the test and you need to change it at runtime, the viewport size, and see when you change the viewport size how the website will look. So this method inside the page object will be very helpful. Now I'll change the view size to 2560 and see the size of the browser changed, and this is how the website will look if you set the viewport size to this. Now let's talk about the locally. Locally is nothing but the time zone where you are. Playwright has an amazing feature like you are here and you can change your time zone to some other country and see how the language change can happen on your website. Okay, so I'll select the locally to DEDE. Okay, and these are nothing but the time zone IDs that you can use and add it. Okay, so I'll add the locally to DED and I'll debug the test. Okay, I'm going to google.com and see the language changed. Perfect. So DEDE is nothing but a German language. So if we change it locally to DEDE, the Chrome browser language changed to German. Now let's add the time zone ID to Europe. Okay. So from here, the link that we saw, we'll add the time zone ID from here, okay, to Euro Berlin. And now if we debug the test, your browser will act as a German language and the time zone that it will support will be nothing but is will be of Europe. So see the language change. To see if everything is working fine for Europe, I'll open the Chrome console and I'll write date. Okay. See the GMT time zone was 200. I am in India. Okay. And the time zone changed. Now let's see. If I change the time zone, what happens? Perfect. So now I will debug the same thing. I won't close the browser. See the language remain the same. But now if I go to the console and if I write new date time, the date time should change to the Indian time zone. And it happened. Perfect. So this is very amazing. Like at runtime, you can change the language as well as the time zone of the browser, and then you can test your application like in this will help basically in internationalization and localization testing. Perfect. So we talk about the emulation part, and now let's talk about the resilient. Why Playwright is says that the test is no flaky test. If you write a test with Playwright, the test mostly be very less flaky. So there is something called auto wait concept in Playwright. Playwright waits for the element to be actionable prior to performing an action. So it has a rich set of introspection events, and the combination of two elements, the need of artificial timeouts, like basically this sentence means that in usually when you write Selenium scripts and those things, you basically add thread dot sleeps and timeouts, and it waits for those many seconds or minutes, which whatever thing you added. But Here it's like it perform auto wait, auto actionable waits, and it also has some rich sets of introspection events that occur in the DOM. So there is no need to add artificial weights, and Playwright handles it automatically. So how it handles, like for checks, it checks that if the element is attached, if the element is visible, if the element is stable, if the element receives an event and it is unable, then only it will go ahead. Like if you do a click operations, it will check all these things, and only if and only if it passes all these checks, then only it will click on that element. Okay, so these are few examples. On the website you have more things, more actions, and for each action, what what kind of like it waits for, which actions it waits for a particular action. So what is tracing? Configure test retry strategy, capture execution trace, video screenshot to eliminate leakage. Playwright trace can be opened by a trace viewer. So basically, you need to do some kind of addition in the options, that you do it in the context that will help you generate a trace. What is a trace? Trace is nothing but it will capture all the snapshots, screenshots, all the actions that you performed, the network calls, the error that can be seen, everything inside a file. Okay, and you can view it using a trace viewer. How it happens? See, in this example, we'll see what things are included. Like we have an action tab that contains all the action things. Look it and you fill it, you click it, you press it. Okay, it captures a screenshot, snapshot, the network calls, the errors, and everything.